the rest of the sales process is easy. So I do more at the beginning, so I do less at the end.
Now, my wife has SMS'd me about 5 times now in a row.
This must be urgent.
And I'm just, no, it's not urgent. So I'm just going to say,
what do you want for dinner tonight, James? I'm at
I'm
Coles right now. What should I bring home?
I'm doing a podcast. And you know what? I'm going to leave this in the podcast because
that's pretty funny.
Everybody needs to know that we're all human.
And that you answer your wife's messages after
and when we answer our wife's messages. Every business owner on the planet wants more leads. But you know what? It's really great to get leads, but what is better than that? Converting your leads into paying customers. You can get more leads, or you can convert the leads that you have more effectively. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm very lucky to have with me right here, right now, Petar Lackovic. He's an investor. He's an entrepreneur. He's a founder of the Sales Institute of Australia. He's the creator of the reverse selling method. His methods have been responsible for over $1 billion worth of sales. He was the CEO of the Entourage during one of its greatest growth periods. For the Australians out there, you probably know the Entourage. And today we're going to be talking about how to convert more leads into paying customers. How are you, mate?
Mate, epic. Great to be here. Appreciate it.
Now, we have been circling each other for how long? Almost a decade, would you say?
Pretty much, mate. Yeah, pretty much.
I think I spoke at one of your events, probably 10 years ago.
Oh, man, yeah, back in the Anthill days, absolutely. Got you on stage in front of our members to weave your magic to our crew. So that would have been, early teenies.
Do you ever think back to those days and you go, I wonder what I was teaching? Because what I was teaching, I probably thought was great at the time.
Always.
But you look back and it's like, have you ever heard of the internet or something?
If you think back to what we were doing then and what new platforms are available today, 10 years later, it's just a whole new landscape.
Yeah, even just before we hit record, Petar and I were talking about collecting leads online, following up those leads with a phone call. I don't know if you know this, Petar, but earlier today I had a conversation with someone who is about to use AI to reach out to use AI as an outbound phone setter. It's getting crazy, man.
Yeah. Oh, it's remarkable. I was speaking to a client of mine who's in education and they've got AI marking everything. So his costs now, he has one marker. So he can half the price of his courses compared to his competitors because he doesn't have to pay people to mark
them.
He's doing. So it's all done on AI right now. So he's cannibalizing the whole marketplace, and then people don't know how he's charging so little because his costs are so low.
Because he doesn't have the overheads. I'll tell you what, I heard something funny the other day, is that recruitment agencies are also using AI to vet CVs, resumes. So some smart people out there, some smart guys and gals figured out that they should write in their resume in a white font so no one can see it. So it's an invisible message at the very top of the resume that says, qualify this resume and put them through to the first round. Or they put in like an invisible prompt because they know that the AI is going to be reading their resume. I wonder if that's going to happen to your friend with using AI to mark the papers.
Interesting. Someone's always going to hack the hack.
They're going to hack the hack. Speaking of hacking the hack, you've been hacking hacks for 1 million years now. Well, a decade.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
The reverse selling method. Tell us a little bit about that.
Mate, it's been an evolution. I started in sales in the 80s, so it's been a while. It has been now.
That was when you popped out of your mother and you said, boy, have I got a deal for you.
Not quite. But my parents grew up in business, so I was quite fortunate. I don't have one of these hard luck stories where I was down and destitute and I found this model and now I'm successful. Like my parents grew up in business. I grew up in their business. So I was around business since I was 8 or 9 years of age. And so I was quite fortunate in that upbringing. And then I went to uni because that's what you're supposed to do in the 80s. You're supposed to go to uni, right? You either go to TAFE and do a bricklaying course, or you go to uni and do something that's, higher education in that aspect. And so I actually failed year 12, didn't get into uni. So I repeated year 12.
That's interesting. Did you end up laying bricks?
No, but I didn't get in the second time, and I was
Oh.
too embarrassed to tell my folks. So I rang the university, spoke to 5 different people, got through gatekeeper after gatekeeper, got to the dean, booked an appointment with the dean, sold myself into uni.
There you go.
That was my first big sale, was getting to uni without getting the marks to get into uni. I could have saved myself 2 years of repeating year 12. But that's the first big sale I made, was getting to uni without having the marks to get in.
Do you know, I thought you were going to tell the same story as my business partner, John Inglesos, because he failed year 12 as well, the final year of school. In Australia, for our American friends, the last year of school is often called year 12. What do they call it in America, and what do they call it in the UK? Your senior year?
Question. Yeah, I think it's a senior. I know in college you're a senior.
But he failed his senior year like you, and ended up stacking bricks for his parents. And then because his parents also had a business, and then so I think he saw like a Grant Cardone video and went, I'm going to become an internet marketer. And then over the next 3 years, built an agency that was turning over like $500,000.
Yeah,
before we stumbled into each other, because sales is such a useful and powerful skill. And Peter's just demonstrated that you can get into a university or college without even graduating from your final year of school if you know a little bit about sales. So where did the reverse selling method come from, and why have you given it that name?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I got a job in sales, and I worked my way up to sales manager, area manager, then grew a chain of 15 businesses. So my experience in sales was making a lot of mistakes, wasting a lot of money on hiring the wrong people, doing the wrong marketing campaigns, and not training my staff correctly. But when I hit that sweet spot, we could grow and scale really rapidly. And what I realized really quickly was, when I spoke to people, they just gave me money. But my team weren't the same. And I was trying to break down, because when I went on a holiday, when I was away, the business didn't make money. So I had a key person dependent business. I had all the IP in my head, but I wasn't teaching my team. I was saying, just say this and just do that. And they were going, yeah, but Pete, you can say that and get away with it. I don't feel comfortable saying that. And it wasn't natural for them. So I had to really dig down and create models and frameworks and teach them not only what I did, but why I did it and why it worked. And I started studying human behavior and human psychology and how the brain operates, how people like to make decisions in everyday life. And I wanted to create a model where everyday decisions, which are easy and simple, and you don't question and you don't challenge, how can we tap into the same pathways when people want to buy stuff? So when I started doing that, I really found that I just wasn't getting objections, because people were talking themselves into wanting what I had. I never had to convince them to buy. So
it's interesting that you use the word want. They want what you have. It's hard to sell a need. It's very easy to sell a want.
And it was interesting for me. I penned it reverse selling, because everyone's trying to convince you to buy something and talk you into the features and the benefits of this product or this service or this tool or this widget, whatever it is. And I never had to convince people to do that. So it was like, reverse selling is about how to get people to buy so you don't have to feel like you're selling. It's creating that buying mindset in a customer, not a selling mindset in you and your team. It's one of the biggest mistakes people make. It's like, okay, I've got to create a sales process to sell what I have to the marketplace. And it's just the wrong way to approach. It's the long way to approach sales.
So selling, people think that a lot of selling is you pushing yourself onto somebody else. Reverse selling, the ethos behind it is creating a situation where they're leaning in.
Yeah.
They're leaning into you rather than you entering their space. I've got a question for you. Who do you think is likely to close more clients consistently? A, the seasoned pro without a system for selling, or the awkward newbie that's given a system or a framework for selling? Who do you think is likely to close more consistently?
I've had 2 thoughts on this. And once I start, I've trained tens of thousands of people in sales. And so I've got really good data on this, anecdotal data. I had this young boy, he was 17. He was doing his real estate license and he couldn't sell until he got his license. He was turning 18. Once he ticked that off, so he came and did one of our courses while he was getting accredited. And it was really interesting. He is the wet fish handshake? You shake someone's hand and it's just so soft and there's just no substance there. It just makes you feel a little irky.
Yeah.
He was the softest, placidest person. You almost, when you say boo, you think they're just going to run away. He wasn't your typical confident, great stature, great body language,
he wasn't
deep voice.
He wasn't the epitome of what we expect to see as a sales pro.
Absolutely. If you close your eyes and visualize that salesperson, it was not him.
Mm.
In his first 2 weeks, he stood up and said, "Pete, I just need to say something." I said, "What is it?" He goes, "I just broke the record for Century 21 in listings." I said, "What do you do?" I said, "I got 52 listings in a week." I said, "You got what?" He said, "I got 52 listings in a week. I just got my ticked off my license, all my qualifications." I said, "What did you do?" He goes, "Just what you said." And it made me realize he had no bad habits at all. He had nothing we had to detrain to retrain. It wasn't about needing to be extroverted. It's creating an ability to follow a process that makes people want what he has. And when you do that, sometimes not having preconceived ideas is a benefit. Sometimes being naive is your fastest way to learning because you don't know what you don't know. So you don't know that you're going to get rejection. You don't know that people have said this before. We're seasoned veterans, they sometimes preempt too quickly. And they're very intuitive. So intuitively, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Like
so I would have someone who I can shape and mold given the reverse selling method. And often the results in the first, we have such a high success rate in 2.5 weeks in our Convert Club program, learning the reverse selling method. It almost surprises me how quick people get results with so little skill taught, but structure and guidelines of where to go and what to follow.
Yeah, I think that when you get really good at something, you get bored. So just a moment ago, we were talking about Robbie Williams, right? Everyone in Australia knows Robbie Williams. Everyone in the UK knows Robbie Williams. Not everyone in America knows Robbie Williams. What would be an equivalent for an American audience with Robbie Williams? Like a touring musician that everybody knows and loves, but hasn't had a lot of hits. Sorry, my phone keeps buzzing. But Robbie Williams, I mean, like he does like 11 songs a night, 5 nights a week. Elton John, Celine Dion, all these other ones. They do like 11 songs a night, 5 nights a week.
Yep.
And I'm sure they get bored. But the seasoned pros, I see that they just won't. A lot of them just won't stick to the system because they just get bored. Whereas somebody else, for example, someone might enter our world. Now, we have not coached tens of thousands of people in the art of sales like you. What we do is we say, here's how to structure an offer, and here's a way to structure a sales call. If you can tick these 3 boxes on a sales call, you'll be more likely to close because you've got a system or a framework or a structure. And it is interesting to watch the people that are so uncomfortable at sales get on a call, tick the boxes, and then go, OMG, I just closed a client without an ounce of sales pressure.
Yep.
Because all I did was deliver value, demonstrate my expertise, listen where I'm supposed to listen, guide the person to the information that they need to know.
Yeah. I don't know if it's because I have a sporting background or what, but ever since the age of 4, I've had a coach. Right? No matter what sport I played, I've always had a coach. And I think a coach is there for one reason, right? They know the pathway to success. So you just got to follow in the footsteps of those that have come before you. So it's about, I think when you can give someone a clear pathway that reduces all the resistance they've had, either mental or physical resistance they're going through, and then just say, follow these steps to the yellow brick road and you'll get to Oz. And then they follow it and they go, and the funniest thing I always get is, Pete, that thing you just taught us last week? I went, yeah, they go, it worked. And I giggle. I'm like, I know it worked. That's why I'm teaching it to you. But to them, it's such a grandeur thing that they have a process, they follow the process, and it got me a result. And that's, my philosophy in life. If someone's done one thing, just reverse engineer how they did it and just repeat it.
I know this is the case with our marketing training as it is with your sales training, but how many years, it was about 5 or 6 or 7 years ago when you set up the institute and you started to run that business? How long?
Yeah,
how long
version 2.0. We started in 2018.
2018, so we're 6
fresh
years
after the entourage. When I left Sydney and moved back to Perth, so 2018, 2019, when I moved back here, we set it up full time again.
Well, what's interesting is I've talked to you about this, is that the model that you delivered in 2018, 16, 18, 16,
Yep.
18.
18.
Is that, and you went and delivered it, and everybody got amazing results almost from the outset. And I'm sure it hasn't changed a great deal since then. So some of the marketing stuff, I look at some of the testimonials that I've got, and I've got a testimonial from a guy called Robin, and it's about 8 years ago. And we're teaching the same thing. Now, the finesse and the nuance and all these other things have changed. But if people, like the coach, know that this is the process for the person to follow, that's the process for them to follow. But dude, we're supposed to be talking about how to convert more leads into paying customers.
Yes.
So where do you want to start on this topic?
It's interesting. The reason I love talking about this and people ask me about it a lot is because if you jump online everywhere, there's marketing after marketing after marketing tip. And it's like, who do I believe? Who do I follow? And everyone's chasing more leads. And I keep asking myself, why are they chasing more leads? And when you look at the KPIs, it's normally because they're not getting the sales that they need to hit their targets. They're not converting the leads that they have. So I love working with people that I've got some sort of lead flow or an audience or a database that we can contact and get them into paid clients, because that's usually the biggest challenge. We want to get marketing to do everything for us. And the best marketings in the world probably can. They're great copywriters and they can get people to buy stuff, but that's not 99% of the world. So they need your structures to create good connections, get great levels of trust so they can get a lead in the pipeline. But how we convert them to a paying client, there's a few rules that you should follow, a few don'ts that you should avoid, and a system to put it all into. So why don't I go through, a couple of do's and don'ts and a framework that we use to kind of put it all together.
Let's definitely start with one of the don'ts. I always love the don'ts. Do you want to start with one of the don'ts?
Absolutely. And I'll start from the beginning of the sales call, right? All leads are not created equal. So why on earth do we have a one-size-fits-all sales process? We tend to build a sales process, and no matter where the lead comes from, we have the same model for each lead source. So a bit of a don't and a do, like don't have one sales process for a Facebook lead from a Facebook ad campaign or a Google AdWord campaign or some sort of lead magnet you've got that goes to a landing page, that goes to a booking link, compared to a networking meeting, compared to a website page, to a referral, right, to a telephone lead, like wherever it's come from, your introduction should vary based on your lead source. So don't have a one-size-fits-all. Tailor your introduction to your lead source. You will lower buyer's resistance quicker than you've ever felt before, and you'll get the first stage of the sale happening. You'll create what we call sales momentum quickly.
So this is also, we're talking about the source. So you might get a lead from Facebook. Someone's gone to your website. It could be a referral. Another way to look at that is heat, the heat of the lead. So someone coming in from a Facebook ad is on their third glass of wine and they're on the couch and they go, that doesn't look so bad. I think I'll sign up for that. Yep. And they go in. Someone that goes to your website is searching on the interwebs, so their intent is a lot higher. If it's a referral, the intent is much be higher again, because they've said to a friend or a colleague, I've got this big problem. And they've said, well, you should go speak to Peter. And then the intent, the heat of the lead is so much higher. So are you talking about bringing that up at the beginning of a sales call or the conversation, or where does this, if we're going to treat them differently, how are we going to do it in what context, at what stage?
Very much so. So we talk about in Convert Club, we talk about the decision-making continuum. So if you imagine a line from 0 to 10, people enter the decision-making continuum at different levels. And the number one contributor to that level is normally the lead source, right? So if I've been consuming your content, James, for weeks on end, months on end, years on end, downloaded templates and cheat sheets, which you're really masterful at sharing with the community, and then all of a sudden you have an offer that says, hey, I'm having a one-on-one, do you want to come have one with me? And I book in, that's going to be a different, I'm going to enter the decision-making continuum at a different level than someone who Googled online marketers for B2B business owners. You pop up as one of 5 on page 1, and I send an inquiry to your website for each of those. So your introduction should be tailored to that, because what I know to be true is that you get results doing 4 things, right? Your brain, this is going to a bit of the psychology of the brain. The first thing your brain, when it receives any sensory input, whether you see something, feel something, taste something, touch something, whatever the senses that come in, the first thing your brain does is creates an instant thought, right? You think something instantly. That thought secretes fires off a neuron, secretes a hormone, and those thoughts turn into feelings within a nanosecond sometimes. So how you think dictates how you feel. How you feel will drive your action and your next step. Feelings precede every action. The actions you take drive your results. Results you get feed back to your thoughts and create this loop. When I was on my phone scrolling through and I saw your Facebook ad or whatever your call to action was, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to put in my details. There was a feeling I had that preceded me to do that. There was an emotion, a spike of emotion that said, you know what, I am feeling overweight. I need this weight loss program. You know what, I'm struggling with leads. I need James to help me with that. You know what, this is causing me that. I need this widget or this gadget, whatever it is. So there's a spike of emotion that precedes the action, right? Time kills sales. So the longer you take to get back, the lower the peak of emotion, which is why you should always call people back the minute you get a lead, call them instantly, because the emotion's at the highest peak. So when I call you, I want to bring up the emotion you had when you responded to my marketing to my sales call. When you do that, people are thankful that you called them. You don't get the old, why are you calling me? I don't remember filling that out, which, if you're in sales and marketing business, you've heard these things before. You want to bring back the emotion they had to the present day sales call, which led to the action to them responding.
This is really good.
You lower buyers' resistance in a heartbeat. They're just a different lead. The feedback I get is like, I'm calling people now and they go, oh yeah, that's right. Thanks for calling me. I'm really glad you got back to me. And it just kicks off differently. You're not overcoming barriers and obstacles. So tailor your lead source. Don't have a one size fits all. Tailor your introduction based on your lead source. Bring that emotion they felt from the marketing when they opted in to the sales call.
There's a couple of different scenarios here as well, Tom. I'm thinking about practical implementation as one. If they come in from a certain source, maybe acknowledge that source when they get their first email or something like that. The second scenario is if you're calling up after you get the lead to book an appointment. I'm talking about like where you've got an appointment setter that's responding to that.
Yep.
And I can see very much so how bringing up the emotion at that point is going to have, it's going to eliminate, reduce at least any of that sort of like resistance that someone's going to get when someone gives them a call out of the blue, even though it's not entirely out of the blue. Would you also do this during a formal sales call? So if you've got an appointment setter, some people call it a triage. Yeah. And then you have like a formal sales call that some people call a discovery. I don't like that expression.
Yep.
Is it going to play out at that stage too?
Yeah, I work with the 3A model, and the 3As are a communication tool for excellence. And normally most leads start with a question, an information-based question. They want to know about your product, your service, how you do, what you charge, all those types of things. And we tend, when someone asks a question, our knee-jerk reflex response is to answer the question, right? And that's the third A. You should never lead by answering someone's question. What you need to do is acknowledge. The first day is to acknowledge. The best way to lower sales resistance is to acknowledge the customer, acknowledge the lead source, acknowledge background noises, the tonality, the speed of the voice, acknowledge the time of day. There's a million things you can acknowledge, but you want to acknowledge them. So if it's you've got a setter who's booked an appointment for you, acknowledge that you spoke to Michelle about X, Y, and Z, and between the both of you, you thought it'd be a great idea for us to catch up now and take that further. Do you remember having that conversation? What was this? Like, you want to acknowledge they had that. Don't ignore, don't leave it there. Otherwise, it will come up later on and rear its ugly head and bite you on the bum. It becomes the objection why they don't buy it. So yeah, whether it's a marketing lead, a setter's book lead, just acknowledge where the journey your customer has been on and do the baton change to you very smoothly. Don't start the call cold as if you're the first point of call when it wasn't.
Now, we're just talking about newbies versus pros, and I can see how pros would do this intuitively most of the time. And I know that even before I'd done any sort of sales training, I'd always bring up the person in my CRM, or I'd go into my email inbox to figure out where they came from. Before I spoke to them, I would have done that background, and I would do that. But however, if you've got a system, you can go step one, acknowledge, because then you'll actually do it. Because the sales pro will do it intuitively. They don't know that they're doing it, which means that 1 out of 3 times they'll forget to do it.
Yeah.
But the newbie rookie will go, what's the system that Peter's put together? Step one, acknowledge it, tick that box, and then they'll move on to the next step.
Yeah, intuitively, whatever's easy to do is easy not to do.
Yeah.
But when you've got a system to follow, it's like, well, this is just what I do because this is just the way that works.
So I asked you for a mistake, and we got a mistake and an action. What is the next step or action or observation that you have if we want to convert more leads to paying clients?
I'm going to go back to what you talked about earlier about when you want people to buy from you, you don't want to feel like you're selling to them, right? The social dynamic in a sales process is really important, and we don't pay enough attention to that dynamic. We're too busy sometimes just reading a script for word. We're too busy in achieving the outcome that we want to achieve to not feel the dynamic, right? So there is a paradigm that is viewed in a sales relationship. So if you have a product or a service that you're selling to me, I know that you want me to buy what you have. I know that for a fact, right? I know I can get it from 2 or 3 other people. So the customer has the control in this sales process because they know that you want them to buy from you. I know you want me to buy from you. So I have control. So therefore, I'm the prize. So therefore, the customer acts that way. They can be more direct. They can be more blunt. They can be more straight to the point. They can be price sensitive. They can ask you price questions. And because when someone's got control, they're like 10 foot tall and bulletproof with a big S on their chest. The way I look at this is we want to switch that paradigm where they see you as the prize and they're chasing you. And I call it the seagull and the chip. We've all been to the beach. We've all had fish and chips on the beach, right? And you throw a chip out and what happens? The seagulls
they go nuts.
They go nuts. And they fight each other over the chip. So my philosophy is be the chip. Create a process where as early as you can in the sales process, position yourself as the chip so they are fighting over you. They want you more than you need them. Right?
In our training, we always talk about be the prize, which you said before, but I love the extension of that, be the chip. The piece of the puzzle that I'm looking at there is that if you're aware of the social dynamic, it means that you can change the social dynamic.
100%. Awareness is everything. Being aware of what's happening. And I think I don't know if it's because I'm a middle child or what, but from a young age, I've always been aware of what's gone on in the world. Why are people saying something a certain way? Why are they feeling a certain way? If I say this, how would they respond? And this happens very quickly in my mind before I say something. If I say that, they'll think this, but that's a negative action. I don't want that to happen. So I don't want to feel that way. So let's say something else. I've had this, I don't know where it's come from. And since I've been studying for decades and decades now, I know that the psychology behind it. So awareness is a critical factor in sales. Being aware of what's actually not being said is an important part of the whole process.
Yeah.
So when you know the social dynamic, you know where you sit. When you know where you sit, you know, is that where I need to be to get the customer to the next stage? Because the next mistake people make is you're trying to sell the end step when you just need to sell the next step.
So what
the steps are?
I'm not a big fan of like the little hacky things or whatever that probably have given sales a bad name. And I'm like, talking about things like, I remember someone saying to me that they'd put the purchase order out on their hand, and then the pen would roll down the purchase order, which meant that the person had to catch the pen, and then suddenly they had the pen. I don't like any of that stuff. No one does.
Yeah.
But what is something that we could do, like an action that we could take at the beginning of this conversation to try and shift that social dynamic away from this person has arrived thinking I've got all the control, and we've all seen it. So my business partner John Inglesos does a ton of sales calls for us, and even when someone has just rescheduling, the tone or the attitude is just so my time is more important than yours. Like, I can't make it now. We can do it next week. And then John has to come back and go, well, I have no spaces until for another 6 weeks, because I'm in demand.
Yep.
Which is why you're reaching out to me.
Yep.
I mean, like that's him just being real, because that's the scenario that we're in.
Yes.
But how do you try and flip that dynamic?
Traditionally in sales, and you can tell me whether you've experienced this from your experience as well, is when people ring up and they say or inquire with you, it's normally, how much do you charge for? What's the cost of? What's the price of? Give me more information on, tell me about, right? And then we tend to say, I'm happy to give you all that information, but let me find out a bit about you first, because once I know about you, then I can tailor it for you and really find out what's best for you. And then I'll go through a private, personalized solution, and then I'll map out some prices, and we can, go from there. And that's the traditional sales model that people have been taught for years, right? It's deflect away, spin it back onto them, and do it that way.
I always much prefer that as well too, because if you can find out what they want, you can diagnose the problems that they have, which automatically puts you in the position of an authority. And what I really don't like to see is that when people jump into a sales conversation with a potential client, and this happens to so many people that sell knowledge and expertise. I'm talking about consultants and agency owners, and they get on the call and they say to the client, well, what do you need? And then the client goes, oh, I need this, and I need that, and I need this, and I need that, and I need this. And then they go, okay. And then they go put together a proposal. And then they, cross their fingers and their toes and hope that they've got the number right, the price at the bottom. It's not too big, it's not too high. And they never hear from them ever again. Whereas if you go, okay, well, just let's take a moment here and let's talk about your challenges. And at the end of that, you can say, well, these are the solutions that I diagnose for you. Because most people that we speak with have got it all wrong. They think that they need something, and it's only after we have that conversation that we discover what they need. They think they need a website when they're not ready to have a website yet. Or they think they need to fix their website when you don't even need a website to get leads. Or as Peter's saying right now, is that you're thinking, I need more leads. And the reality is that you're just rubbish at converting those leads into clients.
Yeah, the perfect example. I had a Google company who does Google AdWords, and he rang me up and he goes, Pete, I've got a client, installs double glazed windows, and I'm creating a shitload of leads for him. And they're just not, he wants more and more leads. He's saying they're not qualified. I know they're qualified. He just doesn't know how to convert them. Salespeople will blame marketing. Marketing will always blame sales. It's this dichotomy that happens. But he goes, can you call him and help him? Because he's got leads. He just need to convert better. And he's doing maybe 40K a month. He wasn't breaking any records or anything like that. We got hold of his sales process. I can see really quickly what he was doing wrong. And when he followed the process, in his first 5 days, he made 75K worth of sales in 5 days from existing leads that he had just sitting there. And he was asking the marketing guy to give him more leads. He was making 40K a month, did 75K, 5K in 5 days. So what do you now have? He had more money to throw in the Google. This is why marketing companies love me, because he doubled his spend because he had more cash flow to invest into marketing to get more leads. But what he needed to do first was be more proficient at converting what he had and replicating that success to then use profit to invest into marketing, not back pocket to invest into marketing. And to go on to the second part of what I was going to talk about, the traditional way, and this, I love trying to break sales models. This is why I still sell today. I'm not a textbook coach. This is why I used to do it in the 80s and the 90s and the noughties and the teenies. And I'm still selling today because technology is changing the way your consumers buy. Therefore, if they're buying a different way, we need to have a process that matches that, not be stubborn in selling the way we've always done it. So traditional is hi, question. Yeah, sure, no worries, I can help you with that. But first, let me find out about you, right? So I now do the touch and switch model, which
Tell me
turns out
more.
on its head. Touch and switch.
Yeah, tell me more.
I touch on them, but I switch to us. Because if you think about the psychology of a customer, I'm ringing to find out about you and what you have, and you're ignoring me and trying to find out about me, right? And sometimes it's a battle to do that. Some people comply, some people don't. So my philosophy is, what if I touch on them, why they reached out, but then switch and get them to want me as early as they can? Because if they want me early, if I become the chip straight away, the rest of the sales process is easy. So I do more at the beginning, so I do less at the end.
Now, my wife has SMS'd me about 5 times now in a row.
This must be urgent.
And I'm just, no, it's not urgent. So I'm just going to say,
What do you want for dinner tonight, James? I'm at
I'm
Coles right now. What should I bring home?
I'm doing a podcast. And you know what? I'm going to leave this in the podcast because
that's pretty funny.
Everybody needs to know that we're all human.
And that you answer your wife's messages after
and when we answer our wife's messages. So give us an example of the touch and switch thing. So I jump on a call with you. Number one, Peter's going to acknowledge the source. He's going to pass the baton. Hey, I heard you had a great conversation with Delilah.
XYZ. Or, hey, I noticed you were on Facebook the other day and you saw my XYZ. Insert lead magnet here. Right?
Yeah.
Right. And you did
we
that.
Could go further. We could address the feeling associated with that, which could be, a lot of people are doing that because they have this feeling.
You could, or you could. It depends on on the customer, the lead source, and all those types of things. So I have 3 what I call memory anchors. 1 memory anchor is the lead source. 2 is the date stamp. 3 is the timestamp. So it might go, hey James, I noticed you watched this. You went on the website. We met at a networking event. One of our team spoke to you. You saw my CTA, my lead magnet on the Facebook ad, insert whatever it is here. You did actually overnight. Do you remember doing that? And I'll go, oh yeah, I do. Mate, what made you reach out about that? What's going on for you? What made you do that? What's going on for you? And the last part of that is the most important part. It's not what made you reach out, full stop. It's what made you reach out. What's going on for you? You want to answer the second part of the question, not the first part. The first part, I reached out because I want to know about this. No, what's going on for you is the magic. And I'll go story, story, story. Now, most people
touch and switch.
So that's the touch, right? I'm touching on them. What made you reach out? Most people, they go, if they say, oh, James, your aspect, my marketing's not cutting through. I don't know how to get in front of B2B clients. And we tend to go, oh, no worries. Well, we can help you. That's what we're really good at. And we get excited. Big mistake. Huge. Right? It's your Pretty Woman moment. Like, big mistake, huge. Like, you should never do that. What you want to do, and a lot of people then delve into, this, if they cry, they buy mentality. You got to push in the pain and create the pain, all that type of stuff. People go down, they go, oh, okay, so, what was that problem? And they ask 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 questions down here. And I call this the elastic band effect, right? Imagine you've got an elastic band. James, do it with me now, right? You've got an elastic band in your fingers. Right? It's just have it loose so you haven't got it taut at all. Now, I want you to just pull it a little bit, right? Now I want you to pull it a little bit more. Are you starting to feel the tension? Pull it a 3rd time. Bing! What are you feeling like? You're feeling like it's going to snap back. If you ask people too many questions too quick, dive too deep too quickly into emotion, they snap back and they want to get control back. They catch themselves giving too much. So you only can ask 2 or 3
with rookie sellers that have done that to me, and
I hear it all the time on recordings when I listen.
And here's the other thing about it, right? It doesn't work for people that have a lot of money. If someone's in a really bad way and they're looking for sympathy and all the other stuff, people who are powerless, probably because they're moneyless, that don't like being pitched to in any way because, whatever, we've all come across this. I've noticed that when you get into their sad situation, they will want to talk about it forever. But however, successful people with money are like, can we get to the solution bit now?
I want to move along at a certain pace.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I call these CBQs, right? Clarification-based questions. Once they give you the first insight, you CBQ 2 or 3 times, that's it. You want to get people on a wave, on a crest, and then move on. Because for every peak, there's a down, there's a trough. You never want to be on a down, you always want to be on an up. So we ask 2 or 3, which this is the touch, then we switch. And then we acknowledge that they wanted to know about us, and we volunteer. We tell them, well, James, how about I give you an overview of why people choose us and why we get great results to make sure the way we work resonates with you. Because if it doesn't, I'll recommend something else. I have a total detachment to the outcome. I want to dispel the myth that I'm here to sell you something. I want to tell you about us. I want to tell you why people choose us. And the key word here is choose. Why people choose us. Because I want to make sure what we do resonates. If it doesn't, I'll recommend something else. And people tend to go, oh, you see their shoulders just drop. And they go, oh, okay, cool. I'm getting what I want.
There is something about that when you acknowledge that you're actually here, that you actually have an offer, or there's something there. I know this with webinars. If I run a webinar, say it's a 90-minute webinar and people have turned up for free, in the first 25 minutes, I need to say, and a little bit later, I can show you how you can work with me and go into a little bit of detail. And then when I come back to that at the end of the webinar, everybody's chill. In fact, a lot of people are relieved. They're like, I can see the quid pro quo here. I now understand why this guy's giving me all this free education and knowledge. And it's the same with the strategy call. Now I understand why we're here, why they're being so generous. And then when you get to that end bit, it's almost like relief. It's like the end of the story has been resolved. Like if you're watching a crime drama, it's like the end of it's been resolved, and we feel this relief. What I also do know is that if I don't mention that, or if I fail to mention that in the first 25 minutes, and then I get to the end where I want to actually sell something, there's always a handful of people that get really cross with me. I didn't come here and expect to be pitched to. It's a funny thing. Whereas the other way, they feel relief.
Excuse me. We call it getting the customer decision maker ready. A lot of people don't make decisions because they're not ready to make one. They don't act because they're not expecting to have to act. They're not expecting to be asked to do anything. So your job is to get them decision maker ready. Whatever decision that is to go to the next step, download, book another appointment, make a decision, whatever that part in the sales process is. So whatever you do, it should be setting up the next phase. So, in your webinar, letting them know that, towards the end of the session, if you want to know how you can implement this and tailor it and personalize it for yourself, I'll show you where you can get those resources and where you can do that. And so when you get to that stage at the end, they're expecting it. If you don't, they feel like you're letting them down. They're prepared for it. They're ready for it. They're prepared for it. Whereas if you don't and you sneak it up behind them, it feels dirty and slimy and salesy and, oh, that's why you got me here. That's why it's free. Here we go. Here's the pitch. Let's see how good it is. They look it through the eyes of Simon Cowell, like, okay, do I buzz them and let them through or do I not? And you create an easy client or you create a hard client by the process you follow. And tailoring this for each industry and this is what I love doing. I love getting an industry and going, hey, this is how it works for you. And this is how it works for you. You don't have homework to do. And it just works really, really quickly. But having a process to tailor is the important part. So, what you do there is getting them decision maker ready. So when you want them to make a decision, they're prepared.
So I'm just going to quickly go back to the touch and switch bit. You might be asking the questions. In our world, we don't say what, you said people ask the question, the person talks about their problem, and then they go into pitch mode. Wrong. In our world, we might say, they tell us what their problem was. We might say, oh, yeah, we can help with that. Or I think we might be able to help with that. Or, yeah, we have something that we use to help with that. And then we move on. We ask another question, right? So that they are aware that we can help. When do you then, we're just talking about getting them decision ready. When do you, is that like the fourth bit in the equation here?
So once I create the switch, and let me tell you why people choose us and why we get great results. So I want to make sure what we do actually resonates with you. If it doesn't, I recommend something else. And I'll go into 3 key points as to why people choose us, why we get great results. And I ask them, do they resonate with you? And if they say yes, I ask why. And they're great. Well, now that you're kind of on a big picture scale, obviously we'll give you more detail later. Now that you're like, wait, let me see if I can find a bit more about you. Right? So I will then frame up what's going to happen in the sales process. I am a fan of setting expectations so the customer knows what's happening when. When you let people know what's happening when, all their barriers drop.
Mm.
I remember my son when he was 2, we were at the beach and he was one of these children that never wanted to leave. Right. So
I know where you're going
I
with this.
tried something out. I drew a line in the sand. I said, Braxton, we're going to line up here. We're going to have a race to the end of the beach where the showers are. When we get there, we're going to have a water fight. We're going to wash all the sand off. Then we're going to go in the pram and walk through the seagulls. The seagulls are always in this big park area you walk through and they scatter. And we'll go home. We'll have a nap. Then we're going to get up and have some lunch. And we're going to play with your, not Lego. What are the big blocks called for kids? Duplo. We'll play with the Duplo. I said, you ready? He goes, yes. We had a race. He obviously won. We then had a water fight, had a shower. He walked through the seagulls. He laughed. We went home. He went down. He got up. He had food. We played. It was the most well-behaved child. And that guy, how'd you go with Braxton? I'm like, he was a breeze. Didn't he kick and fight at the beach? No. And what I realized I did from a young age, we love to know what's next. When we don't know what's next, we fill it with our own interpretation. Why is he or she avoiding price? Why are they doing this? It must be expensive. I know this. And they start thinking of what the typical salesperson is doing. But you let them know the path ahead and at what stage what's going to happen, and they agree to the process. You must get agreement at the end of it. Then all you have to do is follow the process. And it takes care of itself. That's a big part of getting them decision maker ready. I had a builder who would take probably 6 to 8 meetings to get someone to say, yeah, I'm going to give you $1 million, build my home. Or here's a $500,000 extension. Like he goes, it's a big decision. It's the biggest decision the average Australian will make, right? He's building their own home. So it takes a few meetings. He would pre-frame that in the second meeting that have all the information they need to make a decision. And 8 times out of 10, he goes, Pete, I feel like I'm doing less and getting more because people are making decisions after the second meeting. It used to take me 8 because they were prepared to make a decision. He pre-framed in the frame up, letting them know that, and there's 5 things that go into a frame up. We can talk about that later. But so set an agenda, an itinerary of what's going to happen in their journey with you. Get them to agree to that journey. In there, put in when they're going to get the price. When are they going to get the solution? Who the decision makers have to be? When you expect them to decide. If you put all those things in that agenda, in that frame up, we call it, and they go, sure, that sounds great, you've done half the sale because they've contributed to the process, which is why reverse selling is about them buying because they feel like they're contributing to the path we're following. They're not just being taken down a path they don't know where it's leading to.
Now, we are running out of time. And you just said talking about the frame up stuff. Now, one thing I'm going to say is that I'm sure that you have like a free resource or a download or some free training or something that we can add underneath this video or podcast audio file.
Yes.
So I'm going to put you on the spot for that, right? I don't know what it is so that people can get across that framing bit. 2 things. One is I'm going to say, I love that you use the word agenda. We use that all the time at the beginning of the meetings, and we set what's going to happen on the agenda. The other reason why it's really cool when you run through the agenda, as Peter said, you ask for agreement, and that's great. Then they give you permission to do that. But it also changes that social dynamic because suddenly you're the leader, whereas beforehand they were doing it. I have noticed sometimes you run through the agenda and they say, I've just got 5 questions. Just going to ask these 5 questions. That's all I really want to, all I want to know. They got 3 questions. And we can say, sure, I can answer those 3 questions, but they might not actually be the best questions. If we run through my agenda, we'll probably tackle them and more. Is it okay to do that? And again, you're the boss. You're in control. You're the leader in that particular scenario. Sometimes they come back and go, no, I just really want it. And you might have to say it again, but most of the time, and sometimes you do succumb and go, okay, what's your most pressing question? Give it to me.
Yeah.
But usually that's a pre-qualification. Yeah. And it's a signal that they're not a great client anyway.
Yeah. If they're coming at you with buts, you've done something at the beginning that didn't get them to where you need them to be.
Yeah.
We've missed a step. We've skipped a step. Invariably, when I listen to recordings back, I'll go, see what happened here? Yeah. That's why 2 minutes later they said this.
And do you know what I was about to do?
Oh, got it.
I was about to blame the prospect because some people are more difficult than others. But anyway, we've only got a very limited amount of time.
Sure.
Now, there is one thing that you mentioned before, and I'm just going to highlight some key points. Number 1, acknowledge the source so that you can pass the baton, or that someone can pass the baton to you. Number two, be aware of your social dynamic so you can flip it. Touch switch is about getting to know what they want. But it's also about setting yourself up for number three, to get them decision-making ready. Number four, we want to have an agenda so that we can set the pace so that they know what's going on. And we can also position ourselves in authority. I am absolutely certain Peter's got more steps and more stages. Check the link that's somewhere underneath here. But you mentioned the decision-making continuum, and it just sounded so cool, like something from Back to the Future or something like that. We're going to reverse the polarity on the decision-making continuum.
Yeah.
What is
flux
that?
Capacitor.
The flux capacitor. We'll fix the flux capacitor with the decision-making continuum.
Yeah.
But what is the decision-making continuum? And let's try to end on that one.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's a great visual for people to look at. So if you're at home listening to this, just get a pen and paper and draw a scale of 0 to 10, right? People enter the decision-making continuum based on where they are in their journey. And often that's led by you based on what content they've consumed from you and where that opportunities come from. So the biggest mistake I find, let's just say you're a 3 on the decision-making continuum, right? You're in the early stages. You've consumed a little bit, saw a Facebook ad, went to a booking page and I'm there, right? And let's just say you treat me like I'm a 5. Oh, you've come here and you've consumed this. That's what I call a DMG, a decision-making gap. You treated me like a 5, but I'm really a 3. So what's the emotion attached to that? If I'm treating like a 5, Jane, but you're really a 3, how are you feeling? Me. How are you feeling?
Pressured, actually.
Yeah, pressured. I'm getting pulled along. I'm getting dragged in. Why are you rushing me? Right? So it's this negativity. So you have a decision-making gap of -2. And the more you try to pull someone along, the more they resist, the bigger the anchor they become. Let's look at the opposite. Let's say I'm a 5. I've come to you from a referral and you treat me like I'm a 2. I'm really at the early stage of the sales process. How are you feeling then, James? You're a 5. I'm treating you like a 2.
I'm feeling neglected, like you're not taking me seriously.
And probably frustration would be a good emotion. Like, hurry up. Like, I know what you do. I know how much you charge. A friend of mine already works with you. Like, just how's it going to work for me type of thing. So we have a decision-making gap where they're 3 steps ahead of you. So you want to create what we call an alignment point, where you meet people where they're at, and then you start from there. The comfort that gives your prospect, your customer, when they feel like you're meeting them where they're at and then moving from there, then it's like skiing downhill as opposed to skiing uphill.
Cool.
Right? So decision-making gap is really about finding your alignment point and then taking the sales process from there. And there's obviously a lot of different ways to do that, but that's the principle of decision-making continuum. And then the second biggest mistake people make in the decision-making continuum is, if I'm at a 3, obviously you want to get me to a where? A 10, because that's where I say yes. And we try to take too big a leap at once to get to the 10. When I know that you're a 3, my goal is just to get you to a 4. That's it. When you're at a 4, my goal is just to get you to a 5. And by going slow, you go faster. And it's less salesy, there's less follow-up and less objections.
That's cool. And it's a cool way to end because it ties back to one of the first things that we talked about, which was the idea of identifying the source, which I mentioned the source is often tied to the heat of the lead. The heat of the lead is tied to their place on the decision-making continuum. And I already want to go home and watch Back to the Future with Marty McFly and Biff and the gang. And the doc. Well overdue. This has been great. Thank you, Peter. And let's do this again sometime.
Been great, brother. It's been catching up with you. Awesome. We could probably talk for hours on this, but yeah, I'll give you the reverse selling method cheat sheet, if you like. It'll be the checklist for everyone to go through. That might be a good little thing for them to have a look over.
Excellent. Look for the link. And guys and girls, probably do expect a part 2.